Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 3. Now let's start the fanfic. The two children quickly crawled through bushes and moved as quickly and as quietly as possible away from the aim nins. After a few minutes Naruto came to a stop and looked back to see if any of the aim nins were following them or were close by, but thankfully none of them were around. Shion-chan, I have an idea. If you hide here in the bushes I can use a jutsu to turn into you and then I can lead them away from you when they follow me. No, cried Shion as tears started to spill from her eyes. If you do that then they could hurt you or worse you for doing that. But Shion-chan, they won't, they are after you not me, and they won't. I'm pretty good at keeping away and hiding from people, so don't worry about me. No, there has to be another way. We can still keep running and hiding from them together. I won't let you get hurt because of me. But this is the best way I help protect Shion-chan, pleaded Naruto. I don't care, and if you try and do that Naruto, I will go out there and let them catch me. I won't let you get hurt because of me, spoke Shion stubbornly. Fine then, if that is the case then we just have tea, said Naruto before he quickly disappeared and reappeared behind Shion and gave her a chop at the back of the neck and knocking her out. Sorry Shion-chan, but this is the best way I can protect you. Should be alright here, said Naruto as he caught Shion before she hit the ground and then gently put her on the ground behind some bushes. After which Naruto then quickly hanged into Shion and started to run off near where the Amen nins were. The aim nins. Where the hell did those brats go? Asked Ken. How the hell should I know? Spoke Kame angrily. The two of you shut up and keep looking. If we don't find them soon then the high priestess will send her men here to look and find out what happened, in which case she will send her entire royal guard as well as her samurai after us and we be finished, spoke Maku. Look there, the girl, shouted Kame when she saw the disguised Naruto running through the forest. After her, shouted Maku as he and his teammates gave chase. With Shion. Oh, groaned Shion as she woke up. When she finally regained her bearings, she quickly remembered what had happened to her. Damn you Naruto, why did you have to do that and be a hero? Grumbled Shion, if anything happens to you I never forgive. She then quickly got up and started to try and retrace her steps to try and get out of the forest to go and get help, but unfortunately as she tried to remember she soon realized that she was lost. What am I going to do? I'm lost, and if I don't get help soon those ninjas may Naruto, thought Shion worriedly, and she tried to find something familiar that would help her get out of the forest, but unfortunately all the trees looked the same and didn't know which way they had come from. As Shion was trying to gain her bearings in the forest she did not notice the figure coming behind her until it was too late. With Naruto and the aim nins. As the disguised Naruto ran through the forest he turned his head slightly to see if the aim nins were following him. When he turned he saw the two of them, and before he could wonder on the whereabouts of the third, he suddenly found himself being grabbed by the third aim nin Kame. Got you. You little brat, smirked Kame, which ended quickly when he found himself holding a log with exploding notes on it, and before he could throw it away it exploded right in his face. Fortunately for Kame the explosive notes that Naruto had used were low-grade ones, so the explosion did not him, but it did give him a few burns on his face and parts of his body that hurt like hell. Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique. Thought the other two aim shinobis in surprise. How the hell did that brat do that? She shouldn't have any shinobi training, spoke Ken hotly. Well, seemingly she does, replied Maku angrily. Damn that fool Shuta, he never told us that the girl had shinobi training, this makes things all the harder. As the two aim nins were talking, they suddenly heard some movement in the bushes and turned to their right and saw Shion running quickly from them. Maku quickly threw several kunai at the disguised Naruto, which he easily dodged, but unfortunately the kunai were never meant to hit him. Since the kunais had ninja wire tied to them so that when the disguised Naruto dodged them, Maku pulled the kunai back so that the ninja wire would wrap around him. But as soon as Shion was tied up in the ninja wire, she suddenly buffed out of existence. Kage Bunshin, Shadow Clone, won though Maku in surprise before he had to move away to dodge a few dozen kunai. When the disguised Naruto saw that he had missed, he quickly moved out of his hiding spot since he had given his position away when he threw the kunais. But just as he did, he was suddenly grabbed by a strong pair of arms and found himself facing the aim Nin Ken, who in turn believed he was looking at Shion. "I have you now, you annoying brat," said Ken. "You think?" smirked the disguised Naruto as he threw a pepper bomb into Ken's eyes, blinding him. My eyes. "You damn brat!" screamed Ken as he dropped hold of the disguised Naruto and roared in pain as he held his hands in pain. After being let go by Ken, the disguised Naruto quickly tried to run away again but was stopped when several shurikens were thrown in front of him and caused him to stop. After which Maku appeared in front of Naruto. "All right, kid, that far enough, you caused us enough trouble as it is, so why don't do a smart thing and come quietly with us and you won't be hurt," said Maku. "Let's not," smirked the disguised Naruto and throw a smoke bomb in front of himself, which covered both him and Maku and the area around them. After a few seconds, the disguised Naruto quickly ran out of the smoke-filled area and ran as quickly as he could, but as he ran he quickly found his legs being kicked away from underneath him and causing him to fall forward. But luckily Naruto was able to keep his wit about him, and as he fell forward he threw his body forward, which caused him to flip forward and land on his feet. But as soon as he regained his footing, Naruto found a kunai blade against his throat with Maku standing behind him and holding the kunai in a reverse grip. "Nice try, kid, but I'm a seasoned chunin from a megacure and a little kid like you doesn't stand a chance against someone like me. Although I give this, you're pretty sad for a kid your age and you put up a good fight, you might have made a pretty good ninja one day." "Thanks, but I'm not done just yet," replied the disguised Naruto, and before Maku could even ask what Naruto was talking about, he suddenly felt several tiny explosions on his legs. The tiny explosions on Maku's legs were caused by exploding pouches that Naruto had secretly hooked onto Maku's leg during the smoke screen and had activated them right when Maku had caught him. Thankfully, the exploding pouches had distracted Maku enough to make him move away from Naruto, which gave Naruto the chance to quickly turn around and channel his chakra into his fist, where he then punched Maku in the stomach, where thanks to his training with his mother, Naruto sent Maku 20 feet away and right through 2 trees. Impossible. How on earth did a mere child gain such incredible strength? Who on earth has been training her? Though Maku, as he lay on top of the ruined remains of the trees he went through, since he couldn't move as his whole body was in pain. He knew that he had broken at least 8 ribs from smashing through the trees as well as from Naruto's punch. After punching Maku, Naruto began to pant slightly since he was still not used to using his mother's superhuman strength. After a minute or so after gaining his breath, Naruto decided to start running again, and get a head start away from the aim nins before they could reorganize themselves and start chasing him again. As Naruto was about to start to run, a sixth sense that he had developed from in the training he had done with his mother told him to move away. Which he thankfully did, since if he had not, then he would have had his back slashed from Kame, who looked furious beyond words and seemed to beyond all reason, which was most likely due to the burns on his face that disfigured his face slightly. "Damn you, you cursed brat, you for what you done to me," roared Kame as he continued to slash at the disguised Naruto, trying to him, completely forgetting the fact that his mission was to capture Shion and bring her in alive and unharmed. "Damn that fool Kame, he going to ruin everything," growled Maku as he lifted himself slowly up since he still was in a great deal of pain and saw Kame slashing a Shion with his sword who was dodging each slash. Naruto continued to dodge the Kame's sword slashes for a minute or so, during which he tried to make a counter-attack that would give him a chance to get away from Kame, but could not since Kame did not give him one, since his sword slashes were relentless. It continued like this until Kame made a left-hand diagonal slash at Naruto's head, which in turn he quickly made a counterclockwise spin so avoid the sword slash. This then gave him the opening he needed to strike back at Kame, since as he spun back around Naruto was able to come upon Kame unprotected left side and hit him with a supercharged spin kick. But just as Naruto hit Kame with his supercharged spin kick, Kame turned into a wooden log which shattered once it made contact with Naruto's kick. As soon as Kame turned into a wooden log, Naruto quickly realized that Kame had used a Kawarimi no Jutsu and had replaced himself with a wooden log. But before Naruto could do anything, he was blindsided by a kick to the head from Kame which caused Naruto to slam into a nearby tree. Luckily, despite being hit, Naruto was still able to hold his henge, so he still looked like Shion, but even still he was still slightly disoriented from being hit and then slamming against a tree. When he regained his bearings, he looked around quickly for Kame, and quickly saw him standing right in front of him with his short sword above his head ready to cut Naruto's head in two. "Prepare to die, you little bitch," snarled Kame angrily as he was about to swing his sword downward on the disguised Naruto. As Kame swung his sword down, Naruto could not help but try and put his hand up in front of himself to try and stop the blade, even though he knew they couldn't, and closed his eye tight as he saw the blade coming while shouting out, "No!" And at the very moment that Naruto shouted out, "No!" a large wooden spike came out of the ground right in front of Naruto and impaled Kame right through the chest, lifting him in the air slightly so that he was slightly above Naruto. When Naruto didn't feel the sword slicing through him, he opened his eyes to see what had happened. When he did, he quickly regretted it, since right in front of him was the impaled Kame with blood coming out of his chest and dripping down that wooden spike. He also saw the dying Kame staring right at him with a look of complete shock and horror at what had happened to him. Blood was even coming out of his mouth and landing on Naruto's face, but after a few seconds the life quickly left his eyes and he died. When Naruto saw this, he was completely frozen in horror at what had happened in front of him and did not understand what had happened. WWWH, what happened to him? Where did that wooden spike come from? Did I do that with my Mokuten powers? But how did I do it? I didn't mean to summon it, and do that to him. I just wanted to stop him, thought Naruto frighteningly, since he did not what to the man, plus he did not know how he even did it. Naruto was not the only person that was completely stunned what he had just done, both Ken and Maku were equally stunned. Impossible, a mere child Ed came, and how the hell did that child summon that wooden spike, thought Ken in disbelief. Mokuten, thought Maku as he quickly recognized the special ability of the Shadaime Hokage which he had read about. How on earth can a child with no shinobi blood or link to Konoha have the power of its founder? It's not possible. As the two shinobis continued to stare at the disguised Naruto, who was still frozen from the shock at what he had done, in disbelief. Shuda appeared carrying a struggling Shion over his shoulder. "What the hell is going on here?" cried Shuda when he saw the scene in front of him. "Why the hell are you fools chasing after this imposter when I have High Priestess daughter here?" "What? But how can that be when we've been fighting her here?" spoke Ken as he pointed to the disguised Naruto, who was now getting over his shock at what he had done. "Then she must be a fake," said Maku, as he suddenly realized that they had been fooled. "Shion!" cried Naruto when he got over his shock and saw his friends being held by Shuda. "Let her go!" cried Naruto as he stood and glared angrily at Shuda, who just smirked. Who's going to make me? You. Ha. I'd like to see you try, kid. You also might as well get rid of the disguise. We know you're the fake, sneered Shuda as he looked down at him. Realizing that the charade was up, Naruto realized his henge to reveal his true self. Just as I thought, you're the Shiin little playmate, the healer's son. Naruto-kun, run away before they capture you, cried Shiin as she struggled against Shuda. Hold on her. No, I won't leave and abandon you, Shiin-chan, answered Naruto as he glared angrily at Shuda. How sweet. You care about your little friend, but you should off listen to her, boy, or just run away earlier. You might have lived then. But since you didn't, and because you have caused us so much trouble, you will have to die, sneered Shuda. Shuda, don't underestimate the boy. He more dangerous than he looks. Look at what he did to Kame, warned Maku. All that shows me is that you shinobis are not as strong as you have everyone else believe, considering that you were defeated a mere 8-year-old. I finish him off so that we can finally get out of here. We wasted enough time as it is, said Shuda as he drew his sword with his one free arm. Knowing that he did not have much time and could not make a direct attack against Shuda without risk hurting Shiin, Naruto decided to try a jutsu that he had been working on for the past few months. The jutsu was one he had created himself but had no real luck at being able to use it, but he knew this was his only shot at saving Shiin and stopping Shuda. Please let this work. Please let this work, pleaded Naruto in his mind as he did 3 hand signs and slammed both his hands on the ground and channeled his chakra into the ground and cried out. Mokuten. Mokushoku, wood release. Wooden tentacles. After which dozens of wooden tentacles from the tree nearby came out of the ground, started to wrap around Shuda's body, forcing him to let go of Shiin and dropping his sword and then pulling him to one of the trees behind him. Mokuten. He did it again. He really can use the Mokuten power of the Shadaime Hokage, though, a stunned Maku. WWWH, what the hell, what's going on? Shouted Shuda as struggled against the wooden tentacles that pulled his to the tree behind him, and wrapped themselves around his body and month once he was against the tree. Once Shuda was wrapped up in the wooden tentacles, Naruto quickly went over to Shiin to see if she was okay. Shiin-chan, are you okay? Asked the worried Naruto as he helped her up. I think so. Then come, we have to run before those other 2 ninja guys come after us, spoke Naruto as he pulled Shiin with him and started to run. But unfortunately they did not get far before Maku and Ken captured them by throwing Thersarogens, which quickly wrapped around their bodies and legs and stopping the children from running in further. As the 2 children tired to struggle free, the 2 AIM nins came and walked up to them. Once they got to them, Ken turned to Maku. So what do we do with the boy? We will take him with us back to Omegakure. What? But why? After all the trouble he caused us and after Ing came, we should just here and now. Don't be a fool. You saw what the boy was able to do and how well he fought, not to mention he has the Mokuten powers of the Shadaime Hokage. If we bring him back to AIM and present him to Hanzo-sama, we will be heroes, since we would have brought him a child with the powers of Mokuten. Plus, considering how strong he is now, imagine how strong he would be once he was properly trained by Hanzo-sama, and if we got him to be loyal to our village, he could help AIM become the 6th great shinobi power. Not to mention he could start up a clan full of Mokuten users in AIM, helping it to become as great as Konoha, just like the Senju clan did for them, spoke Maku with earnest. After hearing this, Ken could not help but agree with Maku, since the boy could be the key to AIM gaining untold amount of power and glory. Not to mention, if you combined his power with their leader Hanzo, then AIM would become powerful enough to challenge even Konoha. After that, both the AIM ninjas agreed that once they brought Shiin to the Sawa daimyo, they would bring Naruto back to AIM with them. But just when the 2 AIM nins were about to pick up the 2 struggle children, Maku saw something heading towards them at the corner of his eye and quickly shouted, "Move!" to Ken, where they jumped away. As soon as they had moved, they saw that the object that was about to hit them was a massive tree that was thrown at them. When the tree flew past them, and the children if crashed into several more trees nearby and destroyed them completely. What hell? Though both aimed nins when they saw that the object was a tree. Once the tree crashed into the other trees, the two aim nins started to look around as to who or what had thrown that tree at them. When they started to look around, they quickly saw who had thrown the tree, since the person had appeared right next to the two tied-up children. When they saw who the person was, their faces quickly went ghost white and both of them took several steps back in fear. For right before them was none other than Senju Tsunade, the Slug Princess and one of the Densetsu no Sannin, legendary 3 ninja, but what scared the AIM nins the most was that she looked furious beyond words. But if the AIM nin thought they were in trouble before, what Naruto said next made them wish they had never laid eyes on Naruto. Ka-chan. Once they heard Naruto utter those words, the two ninjas knew they were dead men. Tsunade of the Sannin had a child. Though Ken in surprise and in fear, since he knew what would most likely happen to him now. The boy is the son of Tsunade. No wonder the boy is so strong and has Mokudan powers of the Shidaime Hokage, he's his descendant. No matter what, we need to get back to AIM fast and report this to Hanzo-sama immediately, though Maku. But just as he had finished thinking that, he made eye contact with the vengeful-looking Tsunade and nearly shitted himself from the murder look in her eyes. He then knew that the chances of them escaping, let alone surviving, were very, very slim. As Tsunade glared at the two terrified AIM nins, Shizune quickly appeared behind her with her Senbon needles out and ready. Right next to her was also Tonton, who looked ready to fight as well. Shizune. Take Naruto and Shion away from here, they don't need to see what I about to do to these bastards, spoke Suan without taking her eyes off the two nins. Hi Suan sensei, replied Shizune as she quickly picked up to two tied up children and ran off to somewhere safe with Tonton following behind her. As Shizune ran off carrying the children to safety, Tsunade then focused her full attention of the two AIM nins. You bastards made two mistakes today. The first was that you bastards took the job that the daimyo of Sawa no Kuni hired for, and the second was, you threatened and attacked my son, spoke Tsunade as he roared the last part and released a massive amount of intent that practically made the AIM nins shit themselves. After which Tsunade then leapt forward into the air and quickly came falling down to the ground, doing a falling axe kick while crying out, Sudankyaku, painful sky leg, after which she landed right between the two AIM nins and created a gigantic crater. Both Ken and Maku barely jump out of the way of the massive attack, but had several large cuts from the debris of the attack. Her strength is monstrous. How can she even be human? It's no wonder she and her former comrades were able to survive battling against Hanzo-sama with power like that, though Ken in both awe and fear of the sight of Tsunade's superhuman strength. Shit, we have to get out of here now and fast. We don't stand a chance against one of the Sannin, especially one that is a mother, thought Maku as he knew that a mother protecting its offspring was dangerous enough. But the fact that Tsunade was both a mother and a cage-level shinobi made her 10 times more dangerous than she usually was, and the worst type of person anyone would want to face against. Ken, we have to get away from here now, we're no match for her, shouted Maku to his comrade, who nodded and was about to run, but before he could, Tsunade appeared right of him and delivered a massive uppercut, breaking his jaw and sending him flying into the air. After which, before Ken could even register what had happened to him, Tsunade appeared again over him in midair and delivered another massive falling axe kick, hurtling him down to the ground and creating a massive crater in him, as well as breaking every bone in his body at the same time. Once Maku saw what happened to Ken, he tried to run but was stopped by some Senbon needles hitting him in the back of both his legs and causing him to fall forward to the ground. When he turned around to pull the needles out, he was just able to see Tsunade falling towards him from the air with her fist smashing down into him. Once her fist connected with Maku, his body exploded from the sheer power of her strength, where Tsunade was then left in the middle of yet another massive crater, but this time covered in the blood of one of the AIM nins. After dealing with the two remaining AIM nins, Tsunade turned and looked over to the impaled Kame. Once she saw that he was impaled with a wooden spear, she quickly realized what must have happened. After which a new surge of rage came over her and she began to wish that she could bring the AIM nins back to life just so that she could them again, but this time slower and more painful for what they forced her innocent son to do. After she had disposed of the AIM nins' bodies and stripped them of anything useful, Tsunade then turned again to the struggling Shuta, who was trying, but failing, to get out of the wooden binds. As he struggled, he saw the blood-covered Tsunade heading towards him. As she slowly walked over to him, he could feel a potent intent coming from her, as well as see a dark menacing aura surrounding her. This made her seem like she was some goddess of death, which was made more believable to Shuta due to the fact that she was covered in blood and he had seen her butcher Ken and Maku with frightening ease. As she came up to him, a pungent stench could be smelled coming from him and a large wet spot seen between his legs. Once Tsunade reached Shuta, she grabbed him by the neck and forcefully pulled him out of the wooden binds and held him up with a vice-like grip around his neck. You should consider yourself very, very lucky that I'm not going to you, since if I was I would do it very slowly for trying to harm my son and Xian. But since I need you right now, I'm going to let you live for now, since I want you to tell me what the daimyo of Sawa wanted you to do, and if you have better no lie to me. Because I know if you do, and if you try, I will turn you inside out and throw you into a vat of salt. Are we clear? Spoke Tsunade, to which Shuta just nodded and started to spill his guts to Tsunade. A half hour later, after Shizune had taken the children with her, she ran off to a clearing a bit away from where she and Tsunade had found the children. She then untied them and after hugging Naruto tightly for still being safe, she began to check the children over for any injuries, which thankfully were minor with small cuts and bruises. When Shizune had finishing looking over the two children, she asked Naruto to tell them what happened, but when she asked Naruto, he refused to speak or even look at her, as if he was ashamed of doing something. Seeing this, Shizune grew concerned and tried to get Naruto to speak, but he wouldn't say a word. Shizune then asked Xian to tell her what had happened. At first Xian was unsure if she should tell what had happened, but when Shizune pleaded her and she saw the concerned look on her face, Xian decided to tell Shizune. Xian then began to tell Shizune everything that happened about how the guards were ambushed and how they were chased by the AIM nins. As well as when Naruto knocked her out and disguised himself as her, and then how she was captured and how she was brought to where Naruto was fighting the AIM nins and how he defended her until Tsunade had arrived. When Shizune heard Xian's side of the story, she could not help but feel a mixture of emotions after hearing the story. Although she was extreme proud of her godson, little brother, nephew for protecting his friend and being so brave. She was even amazed that Naruto was able to hold off 3 fully trained Chunins by himself and was able to create and use a Mokuten jutsu that he himself created by himself without any help. But still she was extremely angry at him for putting himself in harm's way, by acting as a decoy for the AIM nins to following him where he could have been dead. But Shizune held off her anger since she still did not have the whole picture as to what had happened, since she still did not yet know what fully happened in the fight between Naruto and the AIM nins, since Xian was not there to see it. Shizune then went over to Naruto and gently put her hand on Naruto's shoulder, who flinched slightly at her touch, and spoke to him gently. Naruto, I know you don't want to talk about it, but please tell me, since I want to help you, since I know something bad must have happened to you between those ninjas and you. I would like to know what happened there as well, spoke a familiar female voice. When the group heard the voice, they all quickly turned around and saw Tsunade, not covered in blood since she used a water jutsu to wash away the blood, dragging a unconscious Shuta behind her. "Sensei, are you alright? What happened to the AIM nins?" asked Shizune. "I'm fine, Shizune, and those bastards have been dealt with," replied Tsunade simply. "Now, as I was saying, I would also like to know what happened, although I have heard most of what happened from this bastard, where Tsunade lifted the unconscious Shuta and then dropped him on the ground, and I have a fair idea of what happened. I still like to hear it from you, Naruto-chan." Even after his mother asked to hear what, Naruto did not answer and continued to look ground, and just when Tsunade was about to ask him again, Naruto suddenly spoke up. "If I tell you, you will hate me and think I'm a monster," said Naruto with tears in his eyes, and before he could say any more he was suddenly enveloped into a strong hug by his mother. Shish. Naru-chan, I could never hate you, and you have never done anything wrong in your life. We all just want to help you. That's why you should tell us. Because if you bottle it all up, it will hurt you later on. Talking about things like this to people usually help." For the next few minutes Naruto said nothing and just cried in his mother's arms, but after a while he stopped. He then told them everything from how he led the AIM nins away and fought them, to how he had the AIM nin, came with his Mokudan powers and protected Shien. When Naruto was finished, he then looked to his mother with tear-stained eyes. "I sorry, Ka-chan. I didn't mean to that man, it was an accident. I swear, please don't hate me," said the upset Naruto. The next thing Naruto knew, he was enveloped as another strong hug by his mother, who was now crying herself. "You don't need to be sorry, Naru-chan, it wasn't your fault, you didn't do anything wrong. If anyone to blame, it's them for forcing you to do it and me for not being there to protect you when you needed me." As the mother and so cried in each other's arms, Shizune and Shien watched them, since neither of them wanted to interfere. As Shien watched Suand and Naruto, she herself started to cry, since she blamed herself for what happened, since it was her idea to go out here and it resulted in her guards being Ed and her friend having to someone. Shizune was also crying a little, and when she saw Shien crying and blaming herself, she went over to comfort the poor girl, since she believed it was all her fault at what happened. Thankfully, Shizune convinced her that it wasn't her fault, but the girl continued to cry a little. As she did, Shizune looked over Shuta and could not help but glare angrily at the unconscious man. Since if there was anyone to blame, it was him, since he was the one you told the AIM nins where to attack. As he glared at the man, she wished that she could get her hand on the man and perform surgery on the man, while he was awakened without any aesthetics, and remove his organs one by one for putting the children in harm's way, since she hated when children were harmed, and for making her godson, nephew, little brother a man. After a while, when everyone had calmed down a bit, Tsunade, Shien, Shizune, Naruto, Tonton and the unconscious Shuta, who was being dragged by Suand by his left foot, walk out of the forest. When they were out of the forest, they were met by the high priestess Moroku along with 80 royal guards and 20 samurai. "Oka-san!" cried Shien when she saw her mother with the royal guards and samurai. "Shien!" cried Moroku when she saw her daughter and quickly ran over to her and hugged her tightly. "Thank the heavens that you safe," said Moroku, after which she then turned to Tsunade, who was under her special genjutsu henge again along with Shizune. "Thank you, Hana-san, too. Not only did you save my life, but also the life of my daughter. I'm forever in your debt." "Do not thank me, High Priestess. Thank my son Naruto. He was the one that protected her until I had arrived, and had he not, it would be certain that she would be in the hands of those shinobis and on her way to Sawa no Kuni now," replied Tsunade. "What exactly did the daimyo of Sawa no Kuni want with my daughter?" asked the high priestess slightly angrily, since she wanted answers. "He wanted to take over your country and absorb it into his own, since with you dead your country would be without a leader and be easy to take over. When the first attempted failed, he had the AIM nins and this Shuta bastard to kidnap your daughter and hold her from ransom." They have you go to a certain place with minimum guards and you. After that they would bring Shion to the Sawa daimyo, and when she reached marrying age he would marry her. So that when he took over your country it would be a legal takeover, since Shion is your daughter and rightful ruler of Oni no Kuni. Not to mention he want your bloodline power to see into the future, finished Tsunade, since she found the whole plan disgusting, and when she first heard it she punched Shuda lights out. He will pay this, spoke the high priests furiously, as want to make the man pay for what he done. Here. This will be very useful in handling him, said Tsunade as she tossed a rolled up scroll to the Moroku. What is it? Asked the Moroku as she caught the scroll. It's a letter from the daimyo of Sawa to this bastard, said Tsunade, pointing to Shuda again, stating for him to help with the kidnapping of your daughter Shion and the assassination on you. The idiot had it on him when I searched him. This will prove what the daimyo of Sawa no Kuni tried to do, and if you release the news what happened here in this letter proving the Sawa daimyo underhanded tactics, which will put him in a bad spot with the other nations. Especially with Konoha, since you are our ally, and I don't think he will want to mess with both Oni no Kuni, its allied nations, and Konoha all at once, so it will have to sue for peace on your terms. Thank you Hana-san, I owe you much, said Moroku to Tsunade, after which she then kneeled due to Naruto to face him, and I owe you even more Naruto-san, thank you for protecting Shion. You're welcome Moroku-san, said Naruto quietly with a sad and weak smile, which caused the high priestess to ask Tsunade what happened since he was not himself. When she asked, Tsunade told her that Naruto had accidentally ed one of the ninjas when he fought them. At this the high priestess gasped, and unshed tear threatened to fall, as her heart went out to the poor boy, since no child should have to do what he had to do. This just made anger at the daimyo of Sawa grow, and swore she make the man pay heavily for what he had done. I'm truly sorry for what you had to do Naruto, and I will not forget my debt to you. Thank you, spoke the high priestess, as she knelt down and hugged Naruto in gratitude for what he done for her and her daughter. After she got up she had her guards take Shuda from Tsunade and place him in the dungeon under heavy guard when they reached the estate, and be kept there until he was fully interrogated and was tried for treason. After the guards took Shuda away the group started to head back together to the estate. Later on, a month after the event with the attempted kidnapping of Shion, things started to settle down. News of the failed kidnapping attempt on Shion spread, although information on Naruto and Tsunade involvement was kept secret per Tsunade request. When the allied countries of Oni no Kuni, which included Konoha, learned of the daimyo of Sawa attempt of kidnapping the high priestess daughter, with the letter proving his involvement, they immediately started to put heavy politically pressure on both the daimyo and his country. They threatened to palace an embargo on the country, as well as threatening to declare war if he did not make heftily compensations for what he had done. Eventually the daimyo of Sawa no Kuni complied and had to give a very large sum of money to High Priestess and give up rights to several territories and hand them over to the rule of Oni no Kuni. During that time Naruto, Tsunade, Shizune and Tonton continued to stay in the estate to monitor the High Priestess' health until she fully recovered, as well as to help Naruto deal with what had happened. It had took a while, but eventually Shizune and Tsunade with a little help from Shion helped Naruto come to terms with what he had done and deal with it. Afterward Tsunade even let Naruto keep her necklace since she had a feeling that it would be useful to Naruto later on in his life. Once Naruto had come to terms with it, Tsunade decided that it was time for them to start moving again. Must you leave? You are all more than welcome here, and both Oni no Kuni and myself owes all of you much, spoke High Priestess Moroku. Indeed we can never thank you enough, spoke Haru, who had recovered from his wounds. Yes, considering what happened earlier, if we stay we might draw attention on ourselves, which is something that we wish to avoid as we have told you, so I think it would best if we leave, replied Tsunade. Very well then, but know that you are all more than welcome to come back again, for you are all honored heroes here, and when the time is right everyone in Oni no Kuni will know of it, said the high priestess. Thank you. We shall return one day, replied Shizune as she bowed slightly. We look forward to that day, since we can then honor both you Tsunade-sama and you Naruto-sama properly for saving both Shion-san and Lady Moroku, spoke Tadaho as he bowed respectfully to them. I going to miss you Naruto-kun, you were my best friend, said Shion sadly as tears began to fall down her eyes since she was losing her only real friend. What do you mean by we're best friends? We are still best friends and noting going to change that, spoke Naruto as he went to Shion. Here this is for your Shion-chan, said Naruto as he handed Shion a small potted Satsuki azalea bonsai tree that he had hidden behind his back. This is something for you so that you can remember me by. It's a Satsuki azalea bonsai tree that are not that many, since they are hard and slow to grow, but it was no problem for me. The adults of the group of the two groups could not help but smile as they saw Naruto give the small bonsai tree to a blushing but smiling Shion, who took from him. It beautiful, thank you Naruto-kun, said Shion as she then did something that surprised everyone, especially Naruto. She gave him a soft but gentle kiss on his left cheek. When Moroku saw this she was surprised at first like the rest, but that turned quickly to a smile, especially when Shion moved away and Naruto began to blush red from what she had done. The high priestess even giggled like a schoolgirl when she saw that her daughter was now as red as a cherry from what she had done and had her head down trying to hide it. It seems that Shion has a little crush on Naruto, though Moroku as she giggled again and thought how cute the two would be if they got together. Both Haru and Tadaho were equally surprised but then smiled. When Shizune saw this she could not help but giggle as well. They look so cute, thought Shizune. Naruto going to get a lot of teasing about this from me later on. Even Taunton cried, oink, in laughter of what happened. The only person that was not laughing or smiling was Tsunade. Just great, it already started. These little harpies are already trying to steal my innocent Naru-chan from me, though Tsunade as she started to grumble, but if she thinks she can sink her claws on him then she got another thing coming. After that Tsunade and the other started to walk away as they did the high priestess, Tadaho, Haru and Shion waved goodbye to them. After Tsunade, Naruto, Shizune and Taunton were out of sight, the high priestess and the other head back into the estate. As they did, the high priestess suddenly turned her head slightly and spoke to her daughter. Well Shion, now that you have gotten yourself a little boyfriend, when should I start planning the wedding? Oka-san, cried an embarrassed Shion as her mother along with Tadaho and Haru laughed at the young girl's bright red face. Well, Naru-chan, you're growing up to be quite the little ladies' man since you already got your first girlfriend. Soon enough you have loads girls chasing after you, giggled Shizune. Oink! Cried Taunton in agreement. Kanidne-chan, Shion not my girlfriend, cried a still red Naruto. I just hope that Shion-chan kiss doesn't have any cooties. Author's note. Come on, he only 8 and all boys at that age think girls have cooties. Well, didn't you say that she was your friend and she is a girl, so that means she is your girlfriend, doesn't it? Teased Shizune. She not my girlfriend, I mean she is a girl, and she is my friend, but that doesn't mean that she my girlfriend, I mean it does, but that is, but she is, cried Naruto as he held his head in confusion at what he was trying to say. While Shizune just giggled at embarrassing the poor boy. Maybe we should give Naru-chan the talk, Tsunade-sensei, asked Shizune innocently, although smirking at the reaction she knew Suan would have. Over my dead drunken body, cried Tsunade. There no way I'm going to let any of those little harlots try and corrupt my sweet baby. While at the same time thinking, this wasn't happen so soon, Things like this wasn't supposed to happen till puberty. I'm not ready, I'm too young to deal with this. It had been 2 years after the event in Oni no Kuni, and during that time Naruto had changed a good bit since then. After nearly being captured and ed by the AIM Nins, Tsunade had doubled Naruto's training regimen as well as his medical studies. She had also called in Jiraiya and informed him of the events that happened and asked him to create a tracking seal for Naruto and place it on him. Jiraiya did this by carving a tracking seal onto a chain earring and putting it onto Naruto's right ear. This way, if ever Naruto was in trouble or was missing, Tsunade or Jiraiya could easily track Naruto with it, since they would wear special rings with seals on them, which would allow them to track down Naruto wherever he went. The seal also worked where if Naruto channeled his chakra into the chain earring, Jiraiya and Tsunade's rings would heat up and tell them that he was in trouble and needed help. Tsunade also put her Sozo Seisei, creation rebirth, on Naruto's forehead and then taught him how to focus and store chakra into it and then release it. So to use the Infuen Kai Yin seal release so that if he was ever seriously hurt he could use it to heal himself. Tsunade had done this since she would rather have Naruto shorten his life very slightly than lose it entirely. Naruto had also become more dedicated to his training ever since his fight with the AIM Nins, where he had gotten a first-hand experience of how dangerous the life of a shinobi was. He had also used his desire to protect his family and friends to focus more on becoming stronger, so that he could protect his friends and family better, since he knew that the day would come when they would be unable to help him and they would need him to protect them in turn. During Naruto's training they focused a great deal on Naruto mastering his new superhuman strength, and although he could use it much better than he used to, he still was not on the same level as his mother, but still could do a lot of damage to people and things. Naruto had also gotten better in using medical jutsus as he was able to assist his mother in healing people with non-life-threatening injuries or illness. He had even proven to be more said in certain areas than Tsunade, where he could use Chakura no Mesu, chakra scalpels, in close combat in a fight. During a training spar, Naruto showed that he was precise enough to be able to effectively cut several muscle tissues and tendons on her arms and legs and made it hard for her to move quickly enough or correctly. Tsunade also trained Naruto in Genjutsu, where he showed to be surprisingly said in it, where he was able to quickly grasp the concept of Genjutsu. For example, when Naruto caught Jiraiya trying to peek into the women's hot spring, he put Jiraiya in a genjutsu so that instead of seeing girls, Jiraiya would see old ladies with loads of wrinkles on their body. Jiraiya's screams of horror could heard all around the town when it happened and caused him to have a cardiac arrest. While at the same time Naruto maniac laughing could also be heard, since over time Naruto had inherited several traits from Tsunade. The first was that he liked to gamble, but wasn't as addicted to it as Tsunade was and was very good at it. The second was that he had inherited Tsunade's nasty short temper, although he could control it better than she could, but when he lost it there would be a lot of collateral damage, just like with his mother. The third trait was that he got a perverse pleasure of beating up and torturing perverts, much to Jiraiya's dismay, who had been the object of most of Naruto attacks on perverts, which involved him pranking Jiraiya. At the same time Naruto had somehow also gained a taste for playing pranks on people and was very good at it. Jiraiya had also trained him in ninjutsu and taught him earth jutsus like Doden, Ritsudo Tensho earth style, tearing earth turning palm, Tsuchi Bunshin no Jutsu, earth clone technique, Doden, Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, earth release, double suicide decapitation technique, Doden, Mogaragakure no Jutsu, earth style, hiding like a mole technique, and Doden, Doroku Geishi, earth style, earth shore return. While he also helped him learn water jutsus like Suiten, Mizoripa water style, Violent Water Wave Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, Water Clone Technique, and Suiden. Sushi no Jutsu, Water Style, Water Drowning Technique. Also thanks to the Shodai Hokage's necklace which Naruto now wore, his Mokuden SS improved where he could use Mokuden, Harem Wood Style, Impaling Roots 1 as well as Mokuden, Mokushoku Wood Style, Wooden Tentacles. He even taught himself how to use Moku Bunshin no Jutsu, Wood Style, Wooden Clone Technique after he learned Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, Suchi Bunshin no Jutsu, as well as Mokuden, Henge Wood Style, Transformation. Jiraiya also helped Naruto improve his sealing S where he could easily seal objects and tools into scrolls, as well as use the Shikoku Fuin finger engraving seal, and a couple other sealing techniques. Also after the events in Oni no Kuni, Naruto kept in close contact with Shien where they wrote to one another, but after a year Shien stopped writing back to him. When he mentioned it to his mother, she said that maybe Shien was busy in training to be the next shrine maiden with her mother, since it took a lot of hard work and learning to be one and she was too busy to write right now. Naruto accepted the answer since Shien had mentioned to him that her mother was training her to be a shrine maiden and it was hard work to train to be one, but still he felt concerned as to why she did not reply once to him. A few months later in the middle of a forest in Mori no Kuni, forest country. Naruto was currently walking alone in the forest to train. Both Tsunade and Shizune along with Tonton were in the local village treating a few people. He had told his mother that he was going to train in the forest for a short while by himself since he found that sometimes he needed train alone. Tsunade had naturally been concerned when Naruto did this, but Naruto had promised that he would avoid any trouble and keep a low profile and keep from being noticed by anyone. Also since he still wore his tracking earring, she would know if he was ever in trouble and be able to find him quickly. Naruto wore a pair of gray shinobi pants, black shirt with his great-grandfather's necklace underneath it and a pair of sandals and a gray zip jacket over his black shirt. As Naruto trained alone in the forest he made sure that there was nobody nearby by sending out shadow clones to keep an eye out for anyone that may be coming his way and see him training. Knowing how important that his identity was kept secret until the time was right for his heritage to be announced. Naruto was training hard in taijutsu, since he had realized that he needed a style of fighting that worked well for him, where he could use his speed and naturally agility along with his super strength to their full extent. Although his mother was a said fighter in taijutsu, she had no real style, she mainly used her sheer power and strength to overwhelm her opponents. Naruto knew this would not work for him, since he was not his mother and overwhelming his enemies with brute strength and power would not work for him. He knew there would be enemies out there that could not be defeated with strength and power alone and so he decided to create his own taijutsu style. Since he didn't really have a taijutsu teacher to train him since neither his mother, Shizune or Jiraiya were taijutsu experts in any real style that he could use. For the past year Naruto was trying to create a fighting style that was agile, fast-moving and hard-hitting where he would use not only his fists and feet, but also his elbows and knees. He would use fast-moving hits, jabs and kicks to confuse his opponents and keep them off balance, and at the same time use his natural agility to dodge or avoid his opponent's attacks. He would also use variations of powerful knee strikes, elbow strikes, punches and kicks with his super strength to break or crush different parts of his opponent's bones with a single hit. Thanks to his medical training from Shizune, Naruto knew what parts of the body were sensitive to hits and what parts of the body could cause the most pain to a person. He even trained himself to use several different locks on people that would cause even more pain to them and keep hold of them. Although Naruto had made good progress in developing and creating his new style of fighting, he knew that he was still a long way away from fully developing it. After a few hours Naruto had decided that he head back to his family temporary home and make some lunch. As he traveled, he soon felt two very powerful chakra signatures and three minor ones coming not far from where he was. Judging by how strong they were, Naruto figured they were shinobi since they were too high to be to ordinary people. Not recognizing them, Naruto decided to go investigate them and see who they were. After about 10 minutes, Naruto finally came up to where he felt the chakra signatures. The people he felt were camped in a small clearing with a fire pit in the middle and several sleeping bags around it. The 5 people he had sensed were in the clearing. 4 of them were kids who looked to be about his age, if not slightly older. 3 of the kids were girls while the other was a boy. The 5th person was a large dark-skinned man who he saw talking to the kids. When Naruto saw the group, his thoughts on them being shinobi was confirmed by the way they were dressed. One of the girls was the same dark skin color as the older man. She had dark red hair that reached down to her shoulder blades and with a bandana on her head. She had golden eyes with small round golden earrings. She wore a gray top, a long black skirt with black shinobi pants underneath it and sandals. She also had a long katana on her back. Another girl was pale skinned and had short blonde hair just around her chin. She had blue eyes and wore a short revealing skirt with a gray shirt and a slight midriff showing that she wore a fishnet shirt underneath it. Her appearance also showed she was already at the stage where her were developing well and her body was also starting to become curvy, showing that in a couple of years' time the girl would be a real knockout. Also, like the red-head girl, the blonde girl had a long katana on her back. The third girl had long blonde hair that was tied up in a ponytail that reached down her back. She had dark eyes that were cat-like shaped and was almost as curvy as the other blonde girl and was only starting to develop. She wore gray shinobi pants with a black short-sleeve top with fishnet shirt underneath it and wore black fingerless gloves and gray sandals with leg guards. Like the other 2 girls, she also carried a long katana on her back. The boy was dark-skinned with spiky white hair. He had a gray baggy hoodie with black shinobi pants and sandals and also wore fingerless red teko. Naruto also saw him eating on a lollipop. Like the girls, the boy also carried a long katana on her back. The dark-skinned man, who was clearly the kid's sensei, possessed a muscular build, as well as white hair and beard. On his right shoulder, he had a tattoo that says, Iron, and on his left cheek, he had a tattoo of a bull's horn. He wore oval-shaped sunglasses and a white-colored forehead protector. He also wore a white-colored one-strap over one shoulder flak jacket for a jonin, with a red rope tied around his waist, white hand bands, and a white scarf around his neck, and carried 7 swords on his back. When Naruto saw the symbols of the headband on the group's heads, he knew that the group was from Kumo, since he had learned all the symbols of the current shinobi villages by heart after the Aim Nin incident. Since he wanted to know more about the shinobi world, where should another incident like what happened in Oni no Kuni happen again, he would at least know what caliber of shinobi he would be up against. Naruto could also sense the stronger of the 2 chakra signatures that he had sensed was coming from the sensei, while the other was coming from the blonde girl with the ponytail. This of course surprised Naruto. Even though he knew that some people would be naturally born with high chakra levels, he did not expect as much as what he was sensing from the girl. As he watched them, Naruto saw the sensei taking out one of his swords and then have the boy come forward and take out his own katana. Although Naruto could not hear them, it was obvious that they were having a spar while the girls watched and no doubt waited for their turn to spar with their sensei. As he watched the boy and his sensei spar, Naruto could not help but be impressed by how well the boy fought with his sword. Although it was obvious that the sensei wasn't going all out and was only really playing with him, it was still interesting to watch. Soon enough, Naruto watched the short-haired blonde girl and the red-haired girl each take their turns to spar against their sensei, after the red girl was defeated. Naruto's curiosity got the better of him and he decided to move closer so he could watch them better and hear what they were saying. Carefully Naruto snuck through the trees around the group and moved closer to the group. From his new spot that was closer to the group, Naruto could fully see what they were doing and now hear what they were saying. "Nice move there, little Yugito," the man said as he blocked her sword strike. "HPMH," the girl named Yugito replied as she glared at her sensei and got her sword ready to strike again. But before she could move, the sensei quickly put up his hand to signal her to stop. "Hold on, little kitty, I just thought up a good rhyme," the man said. He then took out a notebook and pencil and began to write down something. "Sensei, this is no time for you to write down one of your stupid rhymes, and I thought I told you not to call me that," Yugito yelled angrily. "Hey, don't diss the rhyming of Rhyme Master B," the man replied as he looked up at the blonde girl. "I'll diss them all I want when they interfere with my training, and besides I'm getting pretty sick of," Yugito replied angrily, but stopped when her sensei suddenly threw his pencil, which was covered in lightning chakra. The pencil flew right past her with incredible speed and went through some bushes behind her. After the man threw the lightning-enhanced pencil, Naruto jumped out of the bushes to avoid it, where it then went through the space that his head was in a moment ago. But even as he avoided the projectile, the pencil cut his left cheek slightly and then went through two tree trunks before it fell to the ground, much to Naruto's shock. But when he jumped out of the way of the lightning-enhanced pencil, he had also revealed himself to Yugito and the other Kumo shinobi. "I spy with my little eye, some stupid fool, spying on eye," the man said in a bad rhyme when Naruto jumped out of the bushes. When Naruto realized that he had revealed himself to the Kumo team, he quickly ran off into the forest. "Who the hell was that?" the dark-skinned red-headed girl asked. "I do not know, but we should go after him and capture him. He may be a spy for another village," said the short-haired blonde girl. "Samui is right, we need to go after him now," Yugito said. Where she, the girl known now as Samui, and the other two students went after Naruto, leaving their sensei alone, who just sighed and went after his students to make sure that nothing would happen to them. With Naruto and the Kumo students. As Naruto ran through the forest, he cursed himself for the 10th time about being so curious and not leaving well enough alone, while at the same time wondered how he kept getting himself into these kinds of messes. Naruto continued to run through the forest until he suddenly forced to stop, when several shurikens were thrown in front of him. As soon as he stopped, he found himself surrounded by the four students with their swords drawn. "He's just a kid," the dark-skinned red-headed girl said. "Hey, who are you calling just a kid?" Naruto angrily said, as he didn't like being called that by a girl who was about the same age as him. "Forget it. Now come with us peacefully and you won't be hurt. We have some questions for you," the boy said. "Let's not," Naruto said as he dropped several small flash smoke bombs on the ground, causing a bright flash and the area around them to be filled with smoke. "Cough, cough, cough, he used a flash smoke bombs on us, cough," the boy croaked. "It's not only that, cough, cough, he also must have mixed some pepper powder into the smoke bombs so to blind us," Sammy croaked as her eyes and throat were burning from the pepper powder. Soon after, the four Kumo genin got out of the smoke-filled area and used the water from their canteens to wash away the power from their eyes. Once the pepper powder was out of their eyes, the boy quickly looked around the ground for any tracks that Naruto may have left. When he looked, he saw several different tracks leading in different directions. "Which way did he go, Omoi?" asked Yugito. "I can't tell, seemingly there are at least 4 different tracks leading in 4 different directions. My guess is he created clones when he used those flash smoke pepper bombs and had them go in different directions so to confuse us. It's a smart move, since if we all follow one, we have a 1 in 4 chance of picking the right one, and if we split up into pairs, we have a 1 in 2 chance of picking the right one, and if we each split up and each chase after one, One of us will go after the real one while the other three chase after the clones, the boy named Omoi said as he looked to the tracks on the ground. That is probably what he wants, since we would be separated from one another and will be unable to use our numbers to our advantage. Since the one who picks him would have to fight him by themselves without the rest of us to help, Samui answered. We have no other choice, we can't let him get away. He's clearly a shinobi as he has the training, Yugito replied. So who goes where? The red-haired girl asked. Samui, you go follow the one that's gone west. Omoi, you go follow the one that's headed north. Karui, you go follow the one that's heading northwest. I'll follow the one that's going east, Yugito said, where the rest of her team nodded and went after their target. With Karui. After about 15 minutes of tracking her target, Karui soon caught sight of her target as she chased after him. She heard Yugito on the radio. Cat to fiery red, and cold blonde come in guys, over. I'm here over, Omoi replied over the radio. Cold blonde here, go ahead cat, over, Samui replied over the radio. Fiery red here over, Karui answered. I've just taken care of the one that I was following. He was a clone, but was not like any kind of clone I've seen before. When I destroyed him, it didn't turn into mud, water or lightning, yet he was solid, over, Yugito said. That's troubling, maybe he knows some kind of new super cloning technique that we haven't heard of. Maybe we should fall back. This guy could be a powerful shinobi that is as strong as sensei, over, Omoi replied. Don't be an idiot, no one is stronger than sensei, not even the Raikage, and besides he's just a kid, we can take him, besides I see my target now, over, Karui said. Don't underestimate him, fiery red, he's already tricked us once before, he could do it again, over, Samui warned over the radio. I'll be fine. I call you guys back in a few minutes to tell you if it's the real him or not, over and out, Karui answered. As Karui chased after her target, she took out a few kunai and threw them at him. The kunai missed him. But as he dodged them, her target lost his balance and fell off the branch he was on and slipped, causing him to the ground hard. Seeing this, Karui quickly jumped down to the ground and went over to her target to see if her target was the real Naruto. As she moved closer, the Naruto in front of her remained still with his eyes closed and his face to the ground. Huh, guess you're not so tough after all. But then, that's what you get when you deal with a shinobi of Kumogakure, the hidden cloud, Karui said with a smirk. Karui was so confident of herself, that when she walked over to him to see if he was the real Naruto or not, she failed to notice the fresh pile of green leaves on the ground near her target and stood on them, activating a rope snare that would have pulled her up to a tree. Fortunately for Karui, she was able to react quickly and flip backwards to avoid the trap. But once she landed, she found that she had landed on a tripwire that activated another trap where two large tree logs came out of the tree line on her left and right sides and were about to collide into her. Acting quickly, Karui narrowly dodged the tree logs by rolling forward when they collided with one another. Unfortunately, when Karui rolled forward, she rolled over another tripwire that activated another trap, where a steel wire net that was hidden under a genjutsu sprung from underneath her and lifted her up into the trees. As she hung from a tree in the net, Karui struggled to get free, but the net was too strong for her to break. She then went to try and cut herself free from the net with a kunai, but when she went to her pouch she couldn't find it. She then looked around for it and saw it on the ground below her. It was then that Naruto stood up and went over and picked up her pouch and then looked up to her with a cheeky smirk that infuriated her. First rule of being a shinobi: never let your opponent get the drop on you, Naruto said with a smirk and then walked away. But not before turning around again and thanking Karui for the extra gear, after which he ran into the tree line, where he could hear Karui's screams of anger and rage, swearing she would him. Once Karui calmed down a little, she quickly got onto her radio. Fiery red to cat, cold blonde and over, Karui spoke. Cat here, go ahead. Fiery red, Yugito replied. I hear you. Fiery red, Omoi answered. Cold blonde here, what is it? Fiery red. Was your target the real one? Samui asked. Yeah, I'm pretty certain that my target was him, but he got away, Karui replied angrily. How? Asked Yugito. He tricked me and caught me in a trap, Karui answered angrily as she was humiliated at being tricked so easily. We told you not to underestimate him, but you didn't listen to us, Omoi said over the radio. Shut up, you idiot! Karui shouted furiously as she was red with humiliation and anger. I'm the idiot. I wasn't the one that got tricked and is now trapped somewhere, Omoi replied calmly. Before Karui could respond, Yugito suddenly shouted into the radio. Both of you shut up, this isn't the time for your petty bickering. Cat is right, we need to capture him. Fiery red, which direction did he go? Over, Samui asked. He's still heading northwest. Over, Karui replied. Right then, cold blonde, both of you head in his direction and try and head him off and capture him. I'll try and catch up with you as soon as possible. Fiery red, once we have captured him, we'll come back and free you, so hang tight. Over, Yugito said. Roger, Samui said. Roger, Omoi replied. Roger, Karui grumbled as there was little she could do other than hang when in the net. Once she finished talking, she tried to make herself as comfortable as possible until her teammates came to help her. As she did, she muttered several different painful things that she would do to a certain blonde-hair boy when she saw him again. With Naruto. As Naruto ran through the forest, he could not help but be pleased with himself. He had taken care of the Kumo genin chasing after him, while the other two were still chasing his shadow clones, and even though the fourth member had taken out the clone she was chasing, she was still too far away to catch up to him. Just when Naruto thought he was in the clear, his mother's training came into effect where his senses warned him of danger. The next second, Naruto was hit in the back by a dozen or so shuriken that had been thrown by Omoi a few meters behind him. But just after the shuriken hit him, Naruto turned into a wooden log. When Omoi saw this, he frowned, since he knew Naruto had used a Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique, to replace himself with a wooden log. He also knew that he had now lost the advantage as he had given away his position, while Naruto was now somewhere hidden in the trees. Realizing that he was now at a disadvantage, Omoi drew his katana and cautiously moved through the trees, looking for the blonde, while at the same time keeping his guard up. As he looked around, his shinobi senses quickly kicked in as he quickly spun around and deflected several shuriken that were thrown from behind him. Before Omoi could retaliate, he suddenly saw Naruto appear to his left with his kunai in hand, leaping towards him. Seeing Naruto, Omoi quickly brought up his katana and blocked the attack. He then pushed Naruto back, making him lose his balance. Taking advantage of this, Omoi then slashed at Naruto with his katana. As soon as Omoi slashed Naruto with his katana, Naruto puffed into smoke, revealing it to be a shadow clone. What the? Thought Omoi when the clone exploded, but before he could fully realize what had happened, several small spherical objects fell from above and exploded, releasing a sleeping gas and knocking out Omoi. Before he fell asleep, Omoi looked up and saw the real Naruto standing from a tree branch above him. Realizing what had happened, and that it was already too late to do anything, Omoi could only think of one word: damn. When Omoi lost consciousness, he fell off the tree branch he was on, but before he hit the ground, Naruto jumped off the branch he was on and caught the Kumo genin. Since all he wanted to do was get away, didn't want to hurt anyone. Once he laid Omoi on the ground, he then ran off in case the others showed up. As he made his way through the forest, Naruto silently thanked his mother for teaching him to make sleeping gas bombs as well as the sleep gas itself, since it had come in quite handy for taking Omoi out without hurting him. Unfortunately, Naruto did not get very far. His danger sense kicked in again, where he had to duck several kuna thrown at him from his left-hand side. When he turned, he saw Samui on a tree branch several meters away, where she then leapt forward with her katana. Quickly dodging several slashes from Samui's katana, Naruto used another smoke bomb to cover the area he was in, giving himself a chance to get away from Samui and think about what to do next. When Samui got out of the smoke-filled area, she quickly took a defensive stance with her katana out and ready to block or deflect any kind of attack that Naruto may do. Suddenly from Samui's right, Naruto appeared on a nearby branch and threw several kunai at her. Wasting no time, Samui turned around and deflected the kunai with her katana. In a feat of impressiveness, she then grabbed one of the kunai she had deflected and threw it back at Naruto, hitting him right between the eyes, before he could move away. When Naruto was hit by the kunai, he exploded into a puff of smoke, revealing that the Naruto she had been fighting with was a clone. Using the clone as a distraction, the real Naruto moved around Samui and attempted sneak up on her and take her out quickly. Unfortunately though for Naruto, after destroying the clone, Samui had realized what he was doing and twirled around to face him, and slashed at her fellow blonde with her katana. Luckily Naruto was able to avoid her slash, but was forced on the defensive. Samui chased after him. As Samui chased after Naruto, the blonde boy quickly found himself having to put a good deal more effort into his dodging Samui's attack. Since he knew that if he didn't, the blonde girl would skewer him or cut up into little pieces. But because his attention on the blonde-haired girl had increased, his attention to his surroundings decreased, so he didn't see the large rock that he was quickly backing towards until he stepped half on it and lost his footing. Seeing her chance, Samui leapt forward with her blade already descending upon the boy. In a desperate attempt at self-preservation, Naruto's left hand shot out and managed to catch the girl's wrist, and with a quick twist of his own wrist, he managed to get her to drop the katana. However, that movement also served to pull Samui towards him, sending both of them rolling across the ground in a mass of flying limbs before finally coming to a stop, one that ended with them being in a rather awkward position. Naruto's left hand was still holding on to Samui's right wrist, pinning it to the ground above her head, while Naruto's own right hand had ended up between the girl's left arm and her body, touching her chest. Naruto's right leg had come to rest between the girl's thighs in a very intimate fashion, leaving his left leg as the only thing really keeping their pelvises apart from each other. It took a moment or two for the two to catch their breaths, as they were both panting heavily with a slight bead of sweat falling down their brows from fighting only moments ago, and both of them were staring at each other's blue eyes intently. Soon enough they both realized the awkward situation they were in, where they each had their own separate reaction. Naruto's cheeks started to blush red when he realized the intimate position he was in with Samui. But despite the situation, he silently thanked whatever deity he could think of, that his godfather and mother weren't here to see this. Since if Jiraiya saw Naruto being in this kind of position with another member of the opposite, he would never let the blonde boy hear the end of it. His mother on the other hand would most likely have gone postal on him and Samui if she saw this, if not do something worse. Samui on the other hand kept cool, calm and emotional look on her face, despite the position she found herself in with Naruto. Although this only lasted a few seconds, where her facade quickly broke and a look of absolute rage and anger appeared on her face and a dangerous look was in her eyes. A look that Naruto was very familiar with from the many times he had seen it on his mother when Jiraiya said or did something perverted, which would result in her beating him into next week for it. It was then that Samui completely lost her cool and screamed, "You pervert!" She then kicked Naruto off her, who flipped backwards as she kicked him, so that he would land of his feet. But as soon as he did, Tsunade got up and charged forward in full feminine rage and slashed the male blonde with her katana again, but this time much faster and much more deadly than before, giving him little opportunity to do anything other than dodge her attacks. Shit. I need to do something quick or else she might actually me, a concerned Naruto thought as he continued to avoid Tsunade's deadly slashes. As Naruto ducked one of Tsunade's slashes, he kicked away her legs, causing her to fall on her back, which gave Naruto a chance to jump away. He then rolled up his jacket sleeve to reveal a Senbon launcher on his arm that Shizune and gave him the cried out, Shikamishinden prepared needle shot, firing 5 Senbon needles at once at Tsunade. The needles were loaded with a toxin that Shizune taught Naruto to make that would paralyze his target and then knock them out a few minutes later. Seeing the needles, Tsunade fully deflected them with her katana, but as soon as she did, Naruto was gone, as the needles were a distraction, giving Naruto a chance to hit and plan. Realizing what Naruto had done, Tsunade fell into a defensive stance and readied herself for any sneak attack that Naruto would make. After a minute or so, she suddenly saw several shuriken flying towards her from her right. But when she deflected them, she felt a sharp pain at the side of her legs and the side of her arms, where they then went numb and she collapsed. When she looked down at her legs, she saw several Senbon needles stuck in her legs and realized that she had been duped again and guessed that the Senbon needles were coated with some kind of numbing toxin. As she lay there unable to move her arms or legs, Naruto appeared above her, holding a small spherical object. He then brought the object to her nose and crushed it, which released a gas that knocked her out within a seconds of inhaling it. Before Tsunade fell unconscious, she heard Naruto say, "Sorry." Once Tsunade was out, Naruto brought her over to a nearby tree and left her there, knowing that she would waken up after a little while but would be still unable to move for a bit longer thanks to the toxin he used in his Senbon needles. For about 15 minutes Naruto ran through the forest, but just when he thought he was home free, an angry Yugito suddenly appeared in front of him. Crap! Naruto thought as stop. This is as far as you go. You may have taken out my teammates, but you will find that I am not as easily defeated as they were, Yugito said. But if you give up now, you won't be hurt. Thanks, but no thanks, giving up isn't in my vocabulary. Fine by me, it's your funeral, Yugito replied as she got into her fighting stance with her katana. Don't underestimate the boy kitten. Although he is young, he is quite said to take out all your other teammates by himself without seriously hurting them. Also, I feel a strange power coming from him, one that is familiar yet different, the Nibi said in Yugito's mind. What power are you talking about? There's nothing special about him, he's just a kid from some enemy village, Yugito replied in her mind. As I said, I'm not really sure. All that I know is that as I look at this boy through your mind, I sense a strange yet familiar power coming from him. One that I have not felt in many years, the Nibi answered. Then what is this power you're feeling? Yugito asked. I do not know, the power is just familiar in a way, yet at the same time it is different. I can't explain it and I can't remember where I felt this kind of power before. All I know for certain is that it was long ago, answered Nibi. Well, that's great Nibi, thanks for nothing, Yugito said with a scowl, as the Nibi's advice was useless if she didn't know what she was up against. Sorry kitten, but still just be on your guard with him, the monster cat replied. Fine. Soon after, Yugito made the first move and charged forward with her katana. Naruto quickly blocked it with his kunai, which he had taken out when Yugito drew out her katana. For several minutes the two of them traded blows with one another until they came to a deadlock where Naruto's kunai went against Yugito's katana in a struggle for dominance. You're pretty good for a kid, Yugito grunted as she tried to overpower Naruto. I could say the same thing about you, since you're pretty good, For a girl, Naruto replied with a smirk, which in turn infuriated Yugito, since she despised comments like that. She then pushed Naruto back and tried to slash him with her katana, but Naruto flipped backwards to avoid the slash and then threw several kunai at her. Yugito quickly deflected the kunai, but in the angry state she was in she could not focus correctly and missed two, where one scratched her left hip leg and the other scratched her right arm. Ignore that scratches, she charged straight at Naruto with her katana. Naruto tried to block with his one remaining kunai, but Yugito quickly deflected the kunai with her sword and slashed at Naruto. But as soon as she slashed at Naruto, he turned into a log, revealing he had used a Kawarimi no Jutsu. As soon as she realized this, Yugito suddenly felt her right arm go numb as well as her left leg. As she felt her arm and leg go numb, Yugito quickly realized that the kunai that had scratched her had been coated with a nerve toxin to make her arms go numb. When she realized this, she began to curse herself for getting angry and losing focus. It was after this that she then saw Naruto coming behind her with a kunai and was about to stab her in the back with it. Seeing this, Yugito quickly twirled around on her good leg to avoid the attack, and as he went by her, she slashed at his back. But as soon as she did, Naruto turned in a puff of smoke, revealing to be a clone. It was when she realized this that she felt a pair of hands grabs onto her legs and pull her down onto the ground, where only her head could be seen above ground. Yugito tried to move but could not, as the nerve toxin had quickly spread through her body and the ground was too tight against her that she could not move enough to dig herself out. It was right then that she found Naruto standing right above her, looking down at her with an annoying smirk on his face, which infuriated her to no end. "What the hell did you do to me?" Yugito growled as she glared up at Naruto. Doden. Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, Earth Style. Double suicide decapitation. It's a very useful technique that pulls down a person, so that only their head is above ground. Where they are unable to move, and I can do anything I like to them, but luckily for you I won't, since I don't want to. So if you excuse me now, I have to go, but it was fun playing around with you guys. We should do it again some other time. See ya, little kitty, Naruto said. As he walked away and waved goodbye to her and saying the nickname he heard her sensei call her, which further infuriated the girl at being so humiliated by him. "I told you, kitty, not to underestimate him," the Nibby said to Yugito. "Can it, Nibby? I don't need to hear this now. I need you to give me some of your chakra now so I can get out of here," Yugito said. "Kitten, you're not ready to handle my chakra yet. You could go out of control with it," the Nibby warned. "I can handle it, Nibby. Now let me have it so that I can get him," Yugito replied angrily. "Very well, kitten, but you have been warned," the Nibby said as she sent some of her chakra to Yugito. As Naruto walked away from Yugito, he suddenly felt a large menacing surge of chakra coming from behind him. When he turned around, he saw it was coming from Yugito. After which a massive explosion of chakra erupted from her, causing earth to be thrown all around and dust cover the area. When the dust settled and cleared, Naruto saw Yugito back above the ground on all fours and covered in a cloak of red chakra that was in the shape of a car with a single tail made out of chakra behind her. While the irises of her eyes were now yellow and cat-like, and her fingernails grew longer and sharper, making her hands claw-like. What the hell? Naruto thought before he saw Yugito charged forward at him. Naruto barely dodged Yugito's attack by jumping to the side. He then quickly made several shadow clones. The 3 shadow clones then surrounded her and threw several kunai at her, but before the kunai could hit her, Yugito let out a massive roar where a massive pulse wave of chakra erupted from her and blew away the kunai and destroyed the clones in one go. It also blasted Naruto several feet away and caused a large dust cloud to cover the area at the same time. What the hell is going on? What kind of power is this? It isn't normal chakra. It feels dark and menacing, Naruto thought as he skidded on the ground. Once he regained his footing, A long red arm made out of chakra came out of the dust cloud and tried to grab Naruto. Fortunately, Naruto was able to jump away into a nearby tree to avoid the arm. Shit. I need to think of something fast now before she s me, Naruto thought as he tried to come up with a plan. He knew he couldn't use any of his more powerful jutsus since if he did and he defeated Yugito with them, she would tell her sensei and her teammates what he did, once she woke up. That would then attract even more attention on him since he was already using Kage Bushin, which could cause a big enough scene as it is. It would be even worse if he tried to use his Mokuten powers on her to subdue her. Where they would start looking for him and his family and hunt them down. As he moved through the forest to keep his distance from Yugito, he was forced to jump out of the tree he was in to avoid another of Yugito's, who appeared and destroyed the tree he was in a moment ago and destroyed it. Yugito was currently running wild, where she lost complete control of herself thanks to the Nibi chakra. She was unable to handle and control the Biju chakra just as the Nibi had feared and was just attacking Naruto on pure animals. After a few minutes of dodging and trying to keep Yugito from ing him, Naruto decided to throw caution to the wind since if he didn't do something soon, she would him. So when Yugito tried to slash him with her claws again, Naruto quickly used a Kawarimi no Jutsu to replace himself with a clone he made earlier, where as soon as she destroyed it, the real Naruto snuck up behind her and placed a small note on the back of her neck. The note had a chakra-suppressing seal on it, which Naruto had drawn. Jiraiya had taught Naruto how to make such a seal in case he needed it to subdue someone and keep them from using their chakra. Naruto hoped that the seal would disrupt the strange chakra Yugito was using and stop her. Once the seal was placed on her, it began to work as Yugito collapsed onto her knees and the red chakra started to dissipate, but just when Naruto thought it was over, Yugito suddenly let out another massive roar and another massive blast of chakra erupted from her and blasted Naruto back to a few tree away. Once the blast ended, Naruto saw Yugito back on all fours again and with the cat-shaped cloak of chakra around her again. When Naruto saw this, he knew his seal had failed as Yugito's strange chakra was too strong and potent to be suppressed by his seal. When Yugito locked eyes on Naruto, she let out another large roar and charged at him. Knowing he had to move, Naruto quickly jumped away and started to run again, trying to think of a new plan to deal with Yugito. For the next 2 minutes Naruto jumped from treetop to avoiding each of Yugito's attacks. It was just when Yugito had destroyed her 12th tree, she found herself surrounded by a dozen Narutos on all sides who attacked her. It of course didn't take her long to deal with the clones, and once she had destroyed all of them, she began to search for the real Naruto and found him within a few seconds, not far from where she was. She then charged forward at him at breakneck speed, but just as she was a few feet away from him, 4 trees that surrounded her blew up with her in the middle of it. What Yugito had not known was that as she was battling the Naruto clones, Naruto had used Fubaku Hojin, sealed bomb square release technique, where he planted 4 exploding notes on 4 trees and then lured Yugito to where he wanted her to go, by allowing her to see him. So that as soon as she entered the area with the notes around it and tried to leave it, the notes exploded, destroying everything in between the 4 trees. Once the smoke cleared from the explosion, Naruto saw the remains of the trees all over the area. When Naruto saw the tree trunks all over the area and could not see Yugito, he was about to go over and move the trees to find her, fearing that he might have ed her. But before he could, he felt another massive surge of chakra and the remains of the trees were blown away by a massive blast of chakra. Once the smoke dissipated, Naruto saw Yugito in the middle of the now destroyed area, but she was now sitting up on all fours hunched like a cat, while the red chakra was starting to dissipate. The chakra outline only remained around her upper torso and arms, although the chakra outline was very thin. When Naruto saw her standing up with the red chakra around her and saw that her irises were still cat-like and yellow, he knew that it wasn't over just yet. Knowing that she could recall her strange chakra again to full power, Naruto decided to finish the fight before it could start again. He then quickly deactivated the seal weights on his clothes and raced forward at Yugito with impressive speed. He then threw several Senbon needles at certain parts of her legs and arms to disable her for a few seconds. After which he quickly came up behind her and did several hand seals and activated his Chakura no Mesu, chakra scalpels, where he then severed her nerves at the back joint of her right legs and did the same on her arms. This caused Yugito to collapse on the ground unable to move with her nerves severed. When Naruto saw Yugito fall to the ground and unable to move her arms or legs, he thought he had finally finished the fight. That was until the red chakra she had been summoning came back and covered her whole body again, where it began to heal her and saw her beginning to move her arms and legs and lifting herself up. Come on. What the hell is with this girl? What does it take to knock her out already? She just doesn't give up, a annoyed Naruto thought. As he was tired, sore, bruised and his clothes were torn up and filthy. Quickly bending down to Yugito, who was now only just starting to get up, Naruto gave her a quick hard chop to the neck and knocked her out cold, before she could even fully call on her strange power. Once he was certain that Yugito was finally out cold, Naruto let out a tired sigh. Damn, I didn't think she'd be this hard to beat. He then picked Yugito up and checked her for any serious injuries. Fortunately there were none, since the red chakra cloak seemingly protected her from any real harm. When he had finished checking Yugito over, Naruto could not help but notice that Yugito was quite cute as she slept or knocked if you wanted to get technical. But as soon as that thought entered his mind, Naruto quickly brushed that thought away, fearing that his godfather's influence was starting to take an effect on him and he was becoming a pervert like him. Once he was certain Yugito was okay, he left her against a tree and left her there so that her friends could find her easily or she could make her way back to her camp. Just when Naruto was about to leave and get back home, he suddenly heard hands clapping and a male voice speaking up. That was a one-beat bottoming, butt kicking of a show little squirt. I gotta say you got some moves, but still you're no match for the master of rhymes, the king of slam, the bring down of beat down, the melodizer, Lord Eight Tails, oh yeah. It was then that Naruto turned around and saw Kumo Genin sensei standing up on a nearby branch and seemingly watching his and Yugito's fight. Who the hell are you? Naruto asked as he took a step back from Yugito. Weren't you listening, stupid? I float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. I'm the eight-tailed beast, yo. The man named replied in a bad rapper impersonation as he moved around in some kind of funny dance. What the hell? Naruto thought as he was weirded out by in the way he was talking to him. Then jumped down from the branch and landed in front of Naruto. But as dazzled and as zam as I can't just let you spilt and go after you owned all my students. Shit. What I'm going to do? This guy Ajan and I don't stand a chance against him, a worried Naruto thought as he fell into a fighting stance. He knew that his only chance was to fight and then make a break for it, and even if he couldn't get away, he was at least not going down without a fight. When saw that Naruto was intended to fight, he couldn't but smile, since although he could tell that Naruto was tired from fighting all his students, he could not help but admire Naruto's guts at still willing to fight even though he knew he couldn't win. You got guts, little squirt, but none too bright, replied as he signaled Naruto to come at him, which he did. Naruto attacked with a series of fast and strong jabs and kicks as well as elbows and knee kicks from different angles. As Naruto attacked him, blocked all of his attacks with ease, since although Naruto was very said for his age, he was still a novice compared to the Kumo Jinchuriki, who was a highly said shinobi with years of training and experience. But even still was impressed with Naruto's fighting especially his taijutsu, since he had never seen or heard of a style like the one he was using. He could tell that the style involved fast, hard-hitting moves using different parts of Naruto's body, and it worked well with Naruto's natural agility, and it gave little chance to fight back. He could also tell that in a few years' time, with a few more years of training, Naruto's fighting style would be quite deadly with enough training and practice. Had also been watching how Naruto handled each of his students and could tell that Naruto was quiet said in the different ways he had handled Yugito and the others without really harming them. He was especially impressed with how Naruto had fought Yugito, since it wasn't every day that a person saw a 10-year-old kid fight a wild and berserk Jinchuriki and defeat it. Granted, if Yugito had been able to control her power, she would have won, but still for Naruto to have defeated her was nothing short of astonishing, and he wasn't even a fully trained ninja. There had been even times during the fight that thought he would have to intervene and stop Yugito, but in the end he didn't have to. After a little while decided to end the fight, where he quickly grabbed onto Naruto's shirt and threw him over to a nearby tree, and then quickly took out 3 of his katanas and threw them at Naruto as soon as he hit the tree. The katanas then hit the collar of Naruto's gray jacket and its sleeves so that the 3 katanas would pin him against the tree and he would be unable to move. "Why don't you hang around while I go wake up little kitty from her cat nap?" said as Naruto tried to struggle out of the katanas. Once woke Yugito up with some smelling salt, he told her to watch over Naruto, while he went to free and wake Omo and the others. While went to free her teammates, Yugito watched over Naruto, who had given up trying to get free of the katanas. As Yugito watched over Naruto, the young Kunoichi glared at Naruto as she was in a bad mood over how Naruto defeated her, not once but twice. The first time because she had underestimated his while the second time because she overestimated her own It also didn't help that the Nibi was also telling her in her mind over and over again about how she told her so about underestimating Naruto and overestimated herself. As Naruto was pinned to the tree, he thought about his situation and what he should do. He knew he could get free if he used his superhuman strength. But if he did, he knew Yugito would attack him, and she had already proven to be a dangerous opponent to fight against, and even if he went all out and defeated her quickly, her sensei and teammates would sense the chakra from the battle and come to her aid and overwhelm him. Not to mention it would blow his cover, where they would report him to their village and they would in turn track him and his family down. The same could be said that he used the seal to call for help from his mother, since if she came they could find out who she really was and in turn find out that he was her son, ruining the low profile that they've been keeping all these years. Although that's if they survived his mother's wrath, since Shizune had told him a while back what his mother did to the AIM nins that had attacked him and Shion. As well as what happened to Shuda once High Priestess Moroku had gotten everything from him. She allowed his mother to deal with him, where according to what he had heard, the prison cell had a new color scheme on the ceiling, floor and walls, the color red, and Naruto wanted to avoid needless bloodshed. Hence Naruto knew that his best chance to get away without anyone getting hurt was to give them a convincing enough story to prove that he wasn't a threat to them and that they could let him go. In the event that idea didn't work, then they would most likely try and take him back to their village for questioning, where he would use his superhuman strength to break out of his bindings and sneak away. And if they tried to him, then he would go all out and try and escape and call for help from his mother with the seal earring and worry about the consequences later. After a little while returned with Omoi, Samui and Karui, where when they arrived, Karui and Samui glared at the young Senju, over what happened when he fought them. Once they arrived, removed the katanas from Naruto's jacket, freeing him. Once Naruto was free, they all surrounded him. "Okay, little squirt, let's hear it and tell us the beef, yo," spoke What? Naruto asked, who didn't understand what B was saying because of his bad rapping. At this, Omoi just sighed and decided to translate for Naruto, since it wasn't uncommon for people to be unable to understand his sensei due to his bad rapping and rhyming. He was asking, who are you and why were you spying on us? My name is Naruto, replied the blonde, and I wasn't spying, I was only looking, since I sensed two large chakra signatures nearby when I was training and I decided to see who it was. Yeah, right. Karui scoffed, not believing Naruto. It's true. Naruto replied angrily, since he didn't like being called a liar when he wasn't. Okay, fine, let's say we do believe you. Then tell us, where do you come from? What shinobi village are you with? Yugito asked. I'm not from a shinobi village, and answered Naruto, since technically it was true, since he wasn't official with any shinobi village. See, he's lying to us, Karui accused as she pointed at Naruto. I'm not lying, Naruto said angrily while he glared at Karui, who glared back at him. If you are not from a shinobi village, then how is it that you are able to do ninjutsu, and how is it that you are able to move and fight like us? The only way you could is if you had shinobi training like us, Samui said with a neutral face. Ha, try and get out of that one, Karui thought with a triumphant smirk. That's because my mother used to be a shinobi, but retired and left her village after I was born and trained my Oni-san and me, when we were old enough to be trained in the shinobi arts, Naruto answered, since even though it was a lie, it was also half true. And who's your mom's? B asked. She the local healer here, my Ka-chan, along with my Oni-san and me, as well as our pet pig Tonton, go with her as she travels around healing people, Naruto answered. Oh come on, you don't believe him, do you? Karui said in disbelief as she didn't believe a word Naruto was saying. I don't know, Karui, I think he might actually be telling the truth, Omoi said. Since when I was getting supplies from the local town, I heard some of the local villagers talking about a female healer that arrived in the village 2 months ago. As well as how she traveled around with her family, a young girl in her mid-20s, a young boy that actually kinds of fits Naruto's description. I also heard that she had a pet pig. I even saw the healer and her daughter distance when she was healing a woman. You can't be serious, they could all be spies sent to either us or spy on us. Karui cried in disbelief that her teammates and her sensei were believing Naruto's story. If they were sent to us, then why did they just send Naruto? Omoi asked. He could have been a scout to watch us and the report back to them later, Karui replied. Then how did they know we would come here? Since they've been here for 2 months, before sensei even planned to take us on a training trip, Omoi replied. Karui of course had no answer to that, since there was no way they could have known they would come here. Fine then, but that still doesn't mean he isn't some enemy shinobi, he could be just using a ruse to throw us off, Karui retorted, trying to find reason to prove that Naruto was an enemy and needed to be dealt with. At this, Omoi just sighed and said, weren't you listening? I told you I heard that she had a son whose description matches Naruto's, but if you want proof, fine. Omoi then turned to Naruto and asked him to describe them to them, which he did perfectly, 3, which caused Karui to scowl angrily when Omoi confirmed Naruto's description. Very well then, if it is true that your mother is a traveling healer, then tell us, what village did she come from? Samui asked, as like Karui she wasn't fully convinced by Naruto's story. Since I find it strange that any shinobi village would allow one of their shinobi to simply retire and leave with her family. This caused Karui to smile at having some support and believing that she had Naruto caught now. My mother came from Yugakure no Sato, village hidden in hot water, since the village has disarmed itself several years ago to become a hot spring resort and they don't need or want any ninjas anymore. When that happened, my mother left the village since she used to be a medic nin and her s weren't really needed there anymore. So she decided to travel around offering her S to people, Naruto lied. When Karui heard this she scowled, believing that Naruto had just slipped out of that one, which was true. At the same time Naruto silently congratulated himself on thinking up such a good and believable story on the spot, since he had remembered when he studied the different shinobi villages. That a few years back, not too long after the end of the Third Shinobi World War, Yugakure began to disarm itself as a shinobi village and became a hot spring resort thanks to the large number of hot springs there. The story was so believable that Urbi and even Samui and Omoi believed it since they knew all about Yugakure and how it wasn't really a shinobi village anymore, so it would make sense for its remaining shinobi to leave it and search new employment. Fine then, if you are really the son of a former medic nin, then she must have taught you some medical ninjutsu, Yugito said. Yea, she did. Then prove who you say you are by healing the wounds you gave Samui and me, Yugito said to see if he really was just the son of a healer. Fine, I will, answered Naruto, where he then began healing the small wounds that he had given Samui and Yugito with little trouble. After he was done, he had pretty much convinced Urbi, Omoi as well as Samui and Yugito, since the way he healed them without any trouble proved that he was a said healer. The only person that wasn't convinced was Karui, who still held a grudge against Naruto for defeating her and capturing her in such a humiliating manner. Okay then Squirt, you answered what for, but now spill on how you do Kage Bushin and use a sealing technique, yo, Urbi asked, which got a confused look from both Naruto and his students. He then explained that the Kage Bushin was a forbidden B-rank clone jutsu that Jonins were only supposed to know, and that it was real and didn't rely on an elemental affinity. He then told him that he saw Naruto use a seal to disrupt the Yugito chakra for a few moments. When Karui heard this, she thought that they had finally caught Naruto out and proven he was a liar. Thinking quickly, Naruto told them that his mother had given him the seal in case he was in danger and needed something to help him if he was in a fighting against a missing nin. He then went on to explain the reason he knew the Kage Bushin was because his mother taught him it. He told them that she taught him it since she knew he had large chakra reverses and could handle creating several clones. Thankfully Urbi and the others, except for Karui, believed his excuse since it was possible considering how well Naruto had fought and lasted against them. But still Karui wasn't about to give up and came up with another reason to not trust Naruto. Fine, but still, why were you watching us? If you really are not a shinobi from another village like you claim, then why would you spy on us? I told you when I was training by myself in the forest I felt your chakra signatures and I was curious as to who you were, that's all, Naruto replied. And why were you training in the forest by yourself? Samui asked. I sometimes like to train by myself, Naruto said simply. But that still doesn't explain why you were watching us. If you were just curious, then you would have just left as soon you had seen us, Yugito said. Alright, fine, I was also curious as to what your sensei was teaching, since I never see kenjutsu before except from what I read in books. So when I saw what you were all doing I decided to watch, Naruto answered, since it was true as he was interested in kenjutsu. At this Karui just scoffed again, not believing a word of what Naruto said. Well, if you would roll with the big dogs, then let's bow wow and see what you got. Wow, said Urbi. Sensei, you can't be serious, Karui cried in disbelief while the rest of her teammates including Samui looked surprised. What did he just say? Asked Naruto, not understanding Urbi bad rapping. Why not? The kid got style. He got pizzazz, and gusto to match, yo, and he totally pawned all of you, Urbi replied with a cheesy smirk while he did his rap dance, which annoyed his students for reminding them of their defeats and because of his stupid rhymes and rapping. Can someone please tell me what you're all talking about, as I can barely understand what he is saying, asked a annoyed Naruto. Sensei just said that if you're interested in kenjutsu and if you want to learn then you can train with us if you want and that is if you can keep up, Yugito answered. Who could still not believe that her sensei was allowing a boy whom they had just met and knew little to nothing about to train with them? Sensei, you can be serious. We can't just let him join us, and besides, what if this some kind of plot to us, and what if he's lying? We don't know anything about this kid, Karui said angrily. Hey, don't call me just a kid, I'm not that much younger than you. 5. Besides, I was good enough to beat all of you. Also, I wasn't the one who was left hanging up in a tree in a net like a sack of potatoes, Naruto said, and smirked when he saw Karui's face turns red from anger and humiliation when she reminded how Naruto defeated her. That still doesn't say you're not lying or trying to trick us, Karui accused. Before Naruto could respond, Urbi interrupted him. The squirt doesn't lie, he's not the type, his eyes don't lie, and I like his face. Huh, said Naruto as he wasn't sure if Urbi was complimenting him or not. He said that he believes you and that you have a trusting face and that you don't seem the type to lie or do something behind another person's back, and he kinds of like you, Omoi translated for the blonde boy. Oh, thanks. Oh, alrighty then, let's get this party started and get down to the beat down, said Urbi. I'm guessing he's saying that we can start training now, right? Naruto guessed where he got a nod from Omoi and the others. Come on, you slow pokes, you're slower than Post, Urbi cried as he told them to hurry up. Does he always talk like that? Naruto asked, to which Omoi and the girls all nodded sadly, where they all followed after Urbi to train. For the next 2 weeks Naruto trained with the Kumo Genin under Urbi, where he would leave his house in the early morning to go into the forest, telling his mother and Shizune that he was going off to train by himself in the forest. Neither Tsunade nor Shizune knew that Naruto was secretly training with a group of shinobi from Kumo, since he knew that if his mother or Shizune knew about this, they would freak out and forbid him from seeing them and he wouldn't be able to train with them. During those 2 weeks Naruto got to know the others better. He found Urbi to be a funny enough person, although he did find him weird with always trying to rap and rhyme and do it badly. He also learned that Urbi demanded respect from his students and others, where he told Naruto to call him either Jinchuriki-sama or Hachibi-sama. It was then that Naruto learned that both Urbi and Yugito were Jinchurikis. He learned this since Urbi made no secret that he had the Hachibi no Kyogyu, the eight-tailed ox, seal inside him, and Naruto figured out that Yugito was one since it explained the weird chakra he saw her fight with. Yugito and the other were of course surprised when Naruto asked her if she was one, where he told them how he realized it, which of course impressed Omoi and the others at how Naruto was able to figure it out. After which they then told Naruto that Yugito had the Nibi no Bakeneko, two-tailed monster cat, inside her. Naruto also became good friends with Omoi, where they found that they had a good bit in common. Since, for example, both of them were nearly always surrounded by girls. Naruto was nearly always with his mother, Shizune and Tonton, girl pig, while Omoi was nearly always with Yugito, Samui and Karui. Hence it was nice for both of them to have some male companionship around their own age. Despite their rocky start, Naruto and Yugito got along okay and developed a sort of rivalry and respected one another. They would often spar against one another in taijutsu, where Naruto usually won thanks to his advanced training with his mother, and in kenjutsu, where Yugito always won since Naruto was only learning. When Naruto asked Omoi why Yugito was always challenging him to spar against her, Omoi explained to him that Yugito was the strongest genin in their village. She was top of their class in nearly everything, where the only other genin that could rival her was Samui, who was the second best genin, but no one could actually beat her in a fight. So in Yugito's mind, Naruto is the only person she deems worthy of being her rival and the only person around her own age group that can challenge her and who she wants to beat in a fair fight. When Naruto heard this, he could only sigh and think about another fine mess he got himself into. Although he had to admit it could have been worse, she could have been some weird girl or guy with bushy eyebrows and wearing a spandex suit and shouting at the top of his or her voice all the time. The only person on the team that he seemingly couldn't get along with was Karui, as she still held a grudge against Naruto for beating her and hanging her up a tree, where she had to be rescued by her sensei. It also didn't help the fact that she was often reminded of her defeat and humiliation by both her sensei and her teammates. As well as the fact that she did not trust Naruto, as she still thought he was a spy or an enemy shinobi. But for the most part she mainly ignored Naruto and only acknowledged him when she had to. Although she still kept a close eye on him in case he would try anything, and so that she would be ready for it if he did. Finally then there was Samui, where despite the awkward position that she and Naruto ended up together, the blonde boy had no problem with her, as she basically treated him coldly, like everyone else, but neutrally, as if the incident never happened. At least until when Samui had asked Naruto for help in bringing water back to the camp from a nearby stream. When they went to the stream, Samui had suddenly stopped and turned around to face Naruto and comforted him about what had happened. Samui then proceeded to tell Naruto that she was willing to ignore the incident between them, as well as forget that it ever happened if Naruto was willing. Naturally, Naruto was more than willing, although there were times when he found it hard to forget it, especially whenever he saw Samui and had to fight the urge to blush red when he thought of it. Once they both agreed to forget the incident, Samui also then told him that should he ever mention the incident to anyone, she would castrate him with a dull and rusty kunai and do several other things that would result in Naruto having a very slow and painful death. Once she had finished telling what she would do to him, Naruto could not help but start to sweat a little and gulp, as well as fight the urge to cover himself, where he nodded his head several times very quickly, telling her that he understood perfectly. Unfortunately, as they were having their private conversation, Omoi had been nearby gathering wood for the campfire, where he had heard the whole conversation as well as the incident between Naruto and Samui. Once they left, he quickly raced back the camp and told his sensei and the other girls what had happened between Naruto and Samui. When the two got back, they were comforted with a screaming Karui, who was accusing them of being intimate, while Yugito just stood back and looked at them with a raised eyebrow, not knowing how to react to the whole situation. While Urbi stood back with Omoi chuckling away and singing bad rhymes about young love blossoming between Naruto and Samui, while Omoi just smirked and enjoyed the show and helped to tease the two. He also even congratulated Naruto on being the only boy to ever cope a feel of Samui and survive, as many boys had tried to back at Kumo and all failed with very bad results, since Samui was Kumo's proverbial ice queen due to her cold appearance and attitude. Naruto had tried to explain exactly what had happened and deny that there was anything between him and Samui. But they ignored his explanation, where Urbi and Omoi continued to tease them, while Karui continued to shout at them. This continued until Samui finally had enough, as she had remained calm and emotionless during the whole event. She then quickly told Karui to shut up with a sharp and cold tone of voice, which silenced the dark-skinned girl Karui. She then silenced Urbi and Omoi, teasing with a cold and frosty glare that made both men shut up and made them shiver slightly. After which she then went over to Omoi and grabbed onto his arm and dragged him behind a few trees a bit away from the camp and did not appear until 10 minutes later. Where Samui came out behind the trees and went over to the campfire to start cooking their lunch. She was soon followed by Omoi, who came out from behind the trees and as white as a ghost and shaking with fear. When Naruto and the others asked what happened, Omoi looked over at Samui, who just gave him a cold look and refused to answer, as if he was too terrified to even say what she had said to him. Seeing this, Urbi, Naruto and the others decided to leave well enough alone and not rattle the cage of the tiger known as Samui. 2 weeks after meeting Naruto, Urbi decided it was time for his students and him to head back home to Kumo, since he knew that his brother A would start to worry soon and probably send every shinobi to look for them. Urbi was currently watching Yugito and Naruto spar with their katanas, 6, against one another while not too far away Samui was sparring against both Omoi and Karui where despite being outnumbered, was winning. As Urbi watched them spar, the elder man could not help but be impressed with how quickly Naruto had grasped the basics of Kenjutsu. Although he was still a long way off for being at Yugito's, Samui's or any of the others' levels in Kenjutsu, he had still made impressive steps in learning it, in just 2 weeks. Urbi had also given him some tips on to improve his taijutsu, once Naruto explained that he was trying to create his own one which greatly impressed Urbi further. Urbi also could tell that Naruto would have been quite a shinobi one day if he was with a shinobi village, since he always had an eye for seeing talent when he saw it in someone and he could see that Naruto had a lot of it. So much so that when Naruto left for home, Urbi followed him, just to make sure that Naruto was telling the truth about himself. Although stealth wasn't Urbi's specialty, he was still said enough to keep hidden and not let Naruto notice him. He then followed Naruto to a small house at the edge of the village, where from a distance he saw Naruto enter it. Later on he saw Naruto come out to greet his mother and sister, and their pet pig when they came home, and saw that they were indeed the healers that Omoian described to him, proving that Naruto spoke the truth. In a way Urbi was also disappointed that Naruto was not born in Kumo or at the very least in Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country, where he would have been accepted as one on the spot. Since talented kids like Naruto weren't very common and if he was with Kumo, Urbi was certain Naruto would have risen high there. He was almost tempted to bring Naruto with him to Kumo and try and have joined Kumo, but he knew his brother would never accept a kid with shinobi training that was from another country regardless of how said he was. Since his brother was paranoid when it came to Kumo's safety and would most likely fear that Naruto was a spy from another village. Not to mention that if he found out that Naruto had defeated Yugito, when she used the Nibi's chakra he would most likely order Naruto to be dead. Fearing that he would be a future threat to the village and he didn't want that to happen to Naruto or his family, which was why he wasn't going to mention Naruto to his brother when he got home and have his students swear not to mention Naruto either. After a while Urbi had Naruto and the others stop their sparring matches and to come over to him where he then told them that they would be leaving tomorrow morning to head back to Kumo. When he told them he could see the disappointed look on Naruto's face, since Naruto had told them that he didn't really have many real friends since he traveled so much with his family from one country to the other. Urbi could also see that even Omoi was a bit saddened as well as Yugito when she frowned slightly. Karui and Samui on the other hand kept a neutral expression on their faces, so to keep everyone else from knowing how they felt about the news. Deciding not to leave without giving Naruto a few parting gifts, Urbi took out a small paper note out of his pouch and handed it to Naruto who had a confused look on his face. What a piece of paper! Naruto asked as he held it up, but before Urbi could explain what it really was Yugito spoke up knowing how her sensei would explain it in one of his bad rhymes. That is not an ordinary piece of paper. It is a paper made from a special type of tree, which is grown and fed with chakra. They are used in products that react to even the slightest hint of chakra in any number of ways, depending on the nature latent in the chakra. This allows a person to know what nature affinity they have. Do you know about nature affinities? Yugito asked, where Naruto just nodded since his mother had told him all about nature affinity and how everyone had at least one natural nature affinity and could learn others if they needed. Naruto also knew his affinity already, since he had the Mokuten bloodline and his mother had told him that Mokuten was based on combining earth and water-based chakra to create wood. But he decided to play dumb since he had heard of these cards from his mother and they were only supplied to shinobi from shinobi villages since they are so hard grown. Where if he told them he already knew his affinity it would raise unwanted questions. Good. Just so you know, all you have to do is place your hand on the paper and channel a bit of your chakra to it and it will react to whatever affinity you have, so if you have an affinity to fire the paper will ignite and turn to ash. If you have an affinity to water the paper will become damp, if you have an affinity to earth it will turn to dirt. If you have an affinity to lightning the paper will crumple up and if you have an affinity to wind the paper will split in two, explained Yugito. Naruto nodded his head as he already understood it all and then channeled a small bit of his chakra into the paper. But what happened next surprised everyone including Naruto. Instead of cutting into two pieces the paper cut into three pieces as it fell to the ground, where the first one turned to dirt, the second became damp and the third crumpled up. This showed that Naruto had 4 natural nature affinities, one for earth, one for water, one for wind and one for lightning. 4 natural affinities, that can't be. Yugito thought in disbelief. No way. Karui thought. Whoa. Omoi thought. Impossible. Samui thought. Damn, the kid is jam-packed with surprises, B thought. Naruto was probably the most shocked of all as he had never expected this. He knew he would have earth and water affinity but not wind and lightning. After a little while everyone got over their surprise and regained themselves. Well, ain't that a kick in the possum? You got more surprises than a barrel of jokers, B joked, which caused Naruto and the others to sweat drops since B jokes were as bad as his rhyming. Once the shock had worn off, B then asked Naruto to give back the katana he gave him, which Naruto did. After which B then took out a scroll and then bit his finger to make it bleed and spread some blood on the seal in the scroll, where a long katana in a green sheath appeared. The suka handle was double length so that 2 hands could grab onto it and it was green while the suka ito, the wrap of the handle, was brown and the suba hilt was round shape with a series of designs and shapes on it. B then threw the katana to Naruto, who caught it. What is it? Asked Naruto. What do you think, stupid? It's not a butter knife, it's a katana for you, fool. You gonna need one to kick, B said with a smirk. For me? Asked Naruto in surprise, where B nodded and smiled. Hearing this, Naruto ran over to B and hugged the elder man saying thank you over and over again. This caused B to smile further and say, Grandmaster B is so cool, he's cooler than all and still ain't a bad guy at all. Once Naruto had stopped saying thank you, B then gave him a few scrolls on Kenjutsu to learn from, so that he could train to get better, which Naruto was grateful for. The next morning, in the early parts of the morning, B and his students finished having breakfast and packed up their belongings. But before they could leave, Naruto arrived to say goodbye to his newly made friends. See you around. Naruto, take care of yourself. If you and your family are ever near Kumo, don't be a stranger and pay us a visit. We can show you around our village, Omoi said as he shook Naruto's hand. Naturally, Naruto said he would, although in reality he knew he wouldn't since his mother wouldn't go near any shinobi village for fear of their exposure. I suggest that you stay alive, Naruto-san, and that you get stronger, since I promise I will be stronger next time we meet again, and the next time we fight the outcome will be very different, Yugito said. At this, Naruto smirked since he was used to Yugito saying stuff like this. Sure thing, Yugito, and you can expect a tougher fight as well when we do fight again. Naturally, Yugito smirked at this and said she would look forward to the challenge. Samui for her part kept her face emotionless and neutral as always, but offered her hand and said a simple, "Goodbye, Naruto-san," which Naruto took her hand and shook it and said a friendly goodbye to her. Karui simple nodded her head and grunted out a goodbye, since she still didn't fully trust Naruto and still held a slight grudge against him for beating her, although despite that, she did think he was an okay person. Urbi said goodbye to Naruto and was going into one of his long rhymes, but before he could even get halfway, Yugito and Samui each grabbed one of their sensei's ears and started to pull them, causing him to yell in pain and telling them to stop, so that they could get going. At this, Naruto could only laugh and was going to miss seeing this kind of stuff with them. Eventually though, the 5 Kumo nins jumped into the treetops, where they waved goodbye to Naruto one more time and then disappeared into the trees. After which Naruto then went home, whereas walked through the forest his thoughts were filled about Yugito and the others, who he wondered if he would ever see again, and if so, where would he